required or what's expected. And so then it gives us these three dimensions where we can exhibit that generosity in our hospitality, in this picture kind of turning the other cheek, and in compassionately sharing life. Now, Doug, these three attributes, which we're going to take a look at, spent some time and some thought, because I really, had 2 weeks. That's a long time for me. So I've had 2 weeks, and you start breaking all these down, and there, you can just go on and on and on. And then I looked back and found I have all this description and all this call and interaction dealing with these three verses, and nowhere in that did I look back at Christ and how he exampled them. And Justin, that was kind of like, punch in the gut, which is what it should have been. And so we're going to take a look at these three things, but we're also going to tie them to three pictures that Christ gave us, showing us all three of these things. Those three things are pretty important things: the incarnation, the crucifixion, and the resurrection. Because I think those three acts of Christ demonstrate these three callings to the T. The first one, and we're not going to do these in the order of the verses, partly because we spent some time in verse 13, and partly because I want to do the toughest one last. Which seems backwards for me, but first, verse 15. Rejoice with them that do rejoice, and weep with them that weep. We'll see this pictured in his incarnation. And I'll start this way. If we are going to rejoice with people when they're rejoicing, if we're going to weep with them when they're weeping, there is a requirement. Brother Tony, we must be close to them. You got to see, you got to be involved. We can't be living this isolated, separated life. And we all struggle with the temptation to keep to ourselves. Now, I want to say this just, because the preacher said this, I think, 2 out of the last 3 weeks. We don't need to be busybodies. And I'm not talking about being a controlling busybody. But we can't use, well, I'm not supposed to be a busybody, and I really like to keep to myself. I like to live a private life. Because we're not called to be people who keep to ourselves. We've been given a great life. We've been given abundant life. That Christ has given us a most precious gift, and he expects us to, as we receive that life, to share that life. And that means we have to be involved with people. We have great burdens. You know what he says we're supposed to do? We're supposed to share our burden. I'm supposed to share that burden. I'm supposed to bear that burden. That does not happen in isolated, separated lives. If I just keep to myself, I'm private, I'm good. This is not how we're supposed to be. We are supposed to love one another. Well, what does that look like? That looks like feeling their pain and sharing their joy. And that has requirement on us. We should ask ourselves, whose pain am I sharing this week? Whose joy am I involved in? Because you know what it means? It means we're loving them. It means we're sharing this life. Think about Genesis. Here you go. God, triune God, Trinity. They're in heaven, and it's perfect. It's complete. We have love flowing back one to the other. What do they need? And this is part of the problem, because sometimes we think, well, he needed us. He created us out of his goodness and his love. God was not needy. He is all things. Okay, there is perfection, and he creates us. So Bill, he could have stayed up in heaven, separate, isolated, just watching. But God, who is spirit, took on form so that he could walk and share life. In the very beginning, we get this nice illustration. This is how you do life. This is what's required. This is what you're created for. He creates marriage, the home. He creates the church. He gives us government. All deals with interpersonal relations. We're not created to be isolated. It sure is safer, though. Or we think so. Here, I'll give you another. The incarnation. Doug, you go to John. Great book. We're going to talk about the incarnation. John chapter 1, verse 14. And the Word became flesh. Dwelt among us. Right. Incarnation. he becomes man. Now, once you get past chapter 1, which takes a long time because there's a lot of good stuff in chapter 1, he becomes man. He dwells among us. He wants to share our pain and our joys. He wants to lead. He wants to direct. He wants to be part of life. So he comes and he dwells amongst us. Then you get on there, and John starts talking about his miracles that he does to show, to reveal, to point out his deity. Now, we know this. What is his first miracle? Where you are sharing joy. What's his last one? Well, he's 4 days late. If he would just be here at a funeral. He shares the joy. He shares the pain. In fact, John 11, I love John 11. Eric, did I give you John 11? I did. When he comes, she runs out to meet him. When Jesus therefore saw her weeping, and the Jews also weeping, which came with her, he groaned in the spirit and was troubled. No? Yeah. Christ is God incarnate. Yes? Does he not know that he's about to raise Lazarus from the dead? Yes, he does. He knows he can. He knows he will. He knows this is about to happen. Time is nothing to him. Yet, in his core, he is troubled when he sees them broken and grieving. You know how many sermons I've heard about this? Well, he was troubled because of their lack of belief, because he knew that they didn't believe that he could raise it from. Brother, that might be possible. That might be true. This is what I know. That verse says he saw them at a funeral, broken and torn apart and mourning, and it affected him. And in fact, it says he wept. He starts out. You know what Hebrews tells us? Hebrews tells us, we have not a high priest which cannot be touched with the feeling of our infirmities. He feels these things. So we have a Savior in heaven who is sharing our pain. He's, right now, Christ is up in heaven, and he's enjoying resurrection life and the communion with the Father like it has been for all eternity, except for once on the cross. And everything should be wonderful. And Justin, you and I, we get together and we just start bawling over the mess that this world is. And he does not look down at us and say, look, there's no reason, stop the crying. It'll be over soon. I'm coming back. You know what? All those things are true. You know what? He looks down and he shares our pain. We have a high priest in heaven who feels our pain. That's our example. How do we argue? Well, you know, Brother Wayne, let me tell you. Brother Wayne has a whole lot of pain. I can't feel all that pain. So this is what I'm going to do. Morning, Brother Wayne. But when he wants to talk, oh, sorry, Doug, how you doing? No, we are called to share the pain and the joy. And that requires us to drop some walls, to get close, to truly care, to truly love, and to reflect the nature of God that he exhibited in his incarnation. 12:13. Contributing to the necessity of the saints, given to hospitality, we're going to tie this to his ascension. Now, realize, when Paul is writing this, Paul is writing this on the eve of the greatest persecution the church has ever known. And if you spend any time looking into the period of the Inquisition, that says a whole lot. Okay, they just went through two terrible emperors, and the worst is right now. So, when he says, distributing to the necessity of the saints, given to hospitality, this takes on a whole different meaning. Because, Brother Moyer, they were getting run out of city after city after city. Persecution was making them leave. There's a Christian who used to live in Clearwater and now had to flee and ends up in Seffner. Who's going to open their door to them? Who's going to let them in? Who is going to help them? Because you know what happens as soon as you let them in? Everybody around here knows you're just like them. It is painting a target on the door. When he's calling them here to hospitality, it's a big deal. When you're persecuted, you flee. When you flee, you need help. And it would be very easy for me to say, it's my home, it's my money, it's my time, it's my gifts. But who gave them to us? And we have no right to keep them unto ourselves. Now here's how this ties to the ascension. We spent a considerable amount of time looking at it last week, so I'm rushing through this point. But what did God do when he went to heaven? Well, he opened the doors of his home to us. In fact, Ephesians tells us he took captivity captive. He took some up there. He already started the party. And then he's going to shower us with gifts. I often wonder, what is a mansion? Because a mansion to me is a much different thing than a mansion to somebody who lives in Africa or lives in poor South America. I know this is going to be everything and more than what I can need. Because he's generous. But he's just going to continue to give. And he calls us to be the same. He calls us to be hospitable people. He calls us to be involved, loving, compassionate people. And the tough one, verse 14, 12:14. And this is a tough one, which it should be, because Brother Tony, we're going to tie this to his crucifixion. Bless them which persecute you. Bless and curse not. Every Christian will experience the pain of being hated, despised, rebuked, mocked by others who hate the Bible. You know how we know that? Because Christ told us that. It's what it's going to be. Which is why, just a few verses earlier, we're told to be patient in this tribulation. Now, I'm going to tell you, if it was just out there, it'd be okay, but it's not just out there. Those things happen in here. But Tony, you may get to the place where you open the home and you invest time and money and family and sacrifice, and really you are opening your heart when you share your life. And things seem to be going well, and you're sharing pain, and then you share a little bit of truth. And you know what happens as soon as you share some truth? Then the rejection happens, and the attack happens, and the hate happens, and the malice happens. I have been mocked by many people at work. I've been made fun of, I've been avoided. But I have never been attacked by anyone in the world as much as I have been attacked by people in the church. I mean, they disagree, they hate, they swing. But in the end, what am I to them? But you upset someone inside these walls, and it's like their life mission has just changed. My goal is now. Look, so you spend time, and you spend effort, and you spend money, and there are things you wanted to do for Miss Pat, and you didn't do. Together, as a family, you agreed to sacrifice for someone else, and in return, the swing, and the attack, and the hate, and the malice, and the damage. Now, okay. You're a growing, mature Christian. So, you're not going to swing back. But Bill, I'm not going to swing back. I'm going to hold it in. You know what I'll do? I'll just quit on them. I'll just separate. They can say whatever they want to. I'm just going to keep doing what I'm supposed to do. Just without them. But wait a minute. What we're supposed to do is bless them. We can't keep doing what we're supposed to do. Okay, but Jeremy, you just don't understand. I get it. Okay, I get it. I'm not going to attack. I'm not going to... There's no malice in my heart. But he doesn't call us to just separate. He calls us to bless them that persecute us. It's the toughest one. It's hard. But Doug, I forget where I heard this. Somebody said this, and I've been quoting this for years, or misquoting it, or abusing it and using it. But somebody once said, if we could become Christians who don't fear and Christians who don't hate, we would become credible Christians because we would be like Christ. Not fear and not hate. We might actually be able to affect others. Christ on the cross. It was more than just, it was care and concern. It was, Father, lay not this sin on their charge. He was thinking about them, their heart, their pain, their place. Peter, I did give you Peter, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, Peter 2. Peter 2:23, who when he was reviled, you want his picture, you want who he was, you want how he dealt with things, who when he was reviled not again. Well, I wouldn't do that either. When he suffered, he threatened not, but he committed himself to him that judgeth righteously. Okay, go back up. For what glory is it if when you be buffeted for your faults, you shall take it patiently? But if when you do well and suffer for it, you take it patiently, this is acceptable with God. This is how he acted. This is how he responded. And when it says right here, it's just plain as day. I mean, it's plain as day. Bless them which persecute you. Well, can't we just make bless mean ignore? Invest not at all. Leave alone. How am I supposed to genuinely, because I don't want to be a hypocrite, how am I supposed to genuinely seek the good of this person who is attacking and constantly doubts and tears down and has caused such destruction in people I love and limited lives? And how am I supposed to genuinely seek their good? It's natural for me to just dwell on those things I just pointed out. The injustice of it all. It's not right. Shouldn't be this way. Two pictures. One, we've got this picture in the Old Testament. Jonah, prophet, didn't want to, went, got, did. Mighty revival. Underneath a plant dies, boo-hoo, it's not right. Shouldn't be this way. It's unfair. They're evil, they're destruction, they're wrong, they've murdered, they've killed. And now, there's grace. How can we actually do this? Well, we get a tip when we study this book of Jonah. Jonah 4:11. I know I give you that one because I won't have to go find it. Did I give you 10? Oh, I did. Or you're just really fast. Then said the Lord, Thou hast pity on the gourd, for the which thou hast not labored, neither madest it grow, which came up in a night, and perished in a night. So what he's talking about is he's talking about pity. Jonah, you pitied this gourd. And should I not spare Nineveh, that great city, wherein are more than 64,000 persons, 120,000 people, that cannot discern between the right hand and their left hand, and also much cattle. Can't discern between their right hand or the left hand. I've heard this described two ways, and both fit. Okay, that means they're little kids. Okay? Or that means that they've sinned and they've destructed and they've grown up in this society to the point that they don't know the difference between good and bad, between right and wrong. And either way, neither do kids. It both fits. But we're talking about 120,000 people who just don't know. And you have no pity for them? That's the key. That's the key to honestly bless them who are swinging at you and me. Is that we have to have pity for them. We have to see the state that they're in. And Corinthians tells us the God of this world has blinded their eyes. What, we want to beat up on the blind person? They think they're doing right. Yeah, but here, that's the next question. Where would you and I be in their exact place if we had the exact teaching? If we didn't have the relationship we had with the Lord, if we didn't spend the time we had in the Bible, if our mind hadn't been rewired, Romans 12, 1 and 2, where would we be if we were in the exact place they are? Why aren't we? Because of grace and because of mercy, and we who have received grace and mercy should give grace and mercy. Calling us to be people just like him. Should I not pity them? You know, there's the problem that it's so hard for us not to concentrate on our pain. When I concentrate on my pain, I don't have to see yours. I can continue to build it, continue to stoke it up. All I see is the challenge and how you dealt with me and how you responded to me and how much I gave and how much I sacrificed and how much I invested and what you did back to me. There's no pity there. Yeah, I do. I pity me. He's calling us to look at them. And then remember how we've been dealt with. I've received a multitude of his tender mercies. Preacher, a multitude. You know, I rarely move, so you probably think I'm just cold and not pay attention. But every time you say testimony, multitude. You just don't have enough time for me to talk. I want to take over your service. Because once you just start thinking about all the things he's done, it just keeps going and going. And then somewhere it starts to focus on how I don't deserve any of them. And then there's more, and there's things I haven't looked at before. I look at their state. I look at how he's treated me. Yet a sinner, he came and died for me. He pursued me in that state. If anyone didn't deserve, yet he pursued me, and then he saved me, and he brought me to the table. And still at the table, I reject, and I run, and I hide. He still plans on marrying me. He bought the harlot back. He daily intercedes. We have a God who feels our pain, who rejoices in our victories, who daily is involved and invested in our life. And all he is asking us to do is be like him. And when it gets too much, guess where we get to go to? To him who has everything and who will provide and will make a way. And it only gets impossible when we run from him. Why would we run from him who knows our pain and knows our love? I got a short little story. just really starting to heat up. Now, it didn't blow up until late 91, but we were sneaking Bibles in there, and knew a couple of missionaries who were doing it, and I got to go with them one time, and actually they were bringing some of the young people out. The preacher based off of, where the line was. You served in one army or the other for the first 2 years, and things were looking like they were going to get bad, and if they did, you're going to be shooting your cousin. And so there were a lot of young people, 16, 17 years old, trying to escape, and there really wasn't anywhere for them to go. The whole world wasn't paying attention to it. In fact, even after it blew up, we didn't pay a whole lot of attention to it. You've got some racial cleansing that went on there that's still covered up. And so there's a guy named Zelko Ulizovic who came and went to the church there. I couldn't say his name, so we just called him Joe. He married an American, ended up coming back to the States. She was a nurse, owns property in Texas. But because of it, I became very close to some of the things that were going on there. I paid attention to them. And this is a story about what happened in 1991 after things had blown up. Dusan is Serbian, but he grew up in Croatia, which literally could just be divided by a street, a creek. You're on the wrong side of the tree. But he grew up in Croatia during the Civil War. Dusan's family had worked in peace just on the other side in Croatia for years. But at the start of the war, all the Serbians who were in Croatia were immediately imprisoned. After some weeks, Croatia agreed to repatriate 250,000 Serbs who were being held within their borders. Now understand, they repatriated women and young children. They kept all the men locked up because they could end up in the army and end up fighting. Dusan was 9. He was put on a bus with his mother and other siblings, along with other mothers and their children, to go back to Serbia. All the fathers and all the sons were either fighting in the Serbian army or remained in prison. The women and children boarded the bus, leaving behind their homes and property with just one bag of personal possessions. I want you to understand, this isn't a story, this really happened. This is a 9-year-old whose dad is still staying locked up, and he's being sent back, and there he is with just his mom. I mean, can you understand the anger, the unfair? This is what happens when you meet evil with evil. Yeah, you think this boy just didn't want to grow up and as quick as he can get a gun? You see, you feel the hurt and the hate growing between the Croats and the Serbians, which is why they arrested him to begin with, keep him locked up. But they were being sent back with just one bag of personal possessions. The bus ride was long, and when the bus finally stopped and the door opened, Dusan ran off the bus. Thinking that he was now in Serbia, he started shouting Serbian chants and swearing against the Croats at the top of his lungs. Dusan said, "I did this as only a zealous 9-year-old sinner could do with all that was in me. So let me tell you, I did it well." His mother sprinted off the bus behind him, and when she caught up with him, clapped her hands over his mouth and whispered in his ear, "We're still in Croatia." Right then, Dusan noticed the squad of Croatian soldiers and policemen standing around them. They had seen him and heard him shouting and cursing. One of the soldiers, who ended up being in charge, started walking towards them. "Is this your son?" he said to Dusan's mother. Dusan said his mother was so afraid she couldn't utter a word. She couldn't even lift her head. She just stood there, looking down on the ground and squeezing him. The soldier told them to stay where they were, surrounded by Croatian soldiers and police with their guns drawn and pointed at them. And he said he would be back. After some time, which seemed like eternity, he returned carrying a box. "It's a long journey. Here are some things to eat and drink." Dusan said it was full of snacks and treats, and his mother immediately began to scream and wail and cry. Years later, Dusan heard the gospel in Germany, and when he did, he remembered the kindness of the Croatian soldier. He said, "Here's what the gospel is. It is like when I came running off the bus, shouting obscenities against God. Clearly his enemy, clearly powerless, clearly hating him, and deserving all the justice that he would send my way. But God responded with a gift. And what a gift it is. The Son of God who loved us and gave himself for us. And Brother Tony, these three verses, all they're really saying is, in the light of the mercies of God to us, we need to contribute to the needs of the saints and seek to show hospitality. We need to bless them who persecute you. We need to bless and not curse them. And we need to rejoice with those who rejoice and weep with those who weep. In so doing, we will be showing forth an example of Christ our Savior. And we just might be turning the tide of evil by not meeting evil with evil, but overcoming evil with good. Josh, any closing word of grace?
Thank you, Lord, for this lesson